Welcome everybody to the weekly shir in Chassidut in English, right here in Yerushalayim, Tuesday evenings at 7:30. We are in the middle of learning Derech Mitzvotecha, which is the mimer of the Tzemach Tzedek, on the subject of loving every single Jew and the prohibition that we should not hate any Jew. By divine providence, the government fell yesterday.
Amen.
And in the next 4 months is going to be elections, as it seems. And so I think from the onset, we need to understand clearly that we're allowed to disagree. We have to vote. We have to vote for whoever we feel is the greatest in the three shleimuyot, the three completion levels of completion, which is completion of Torah, completion of Am Yisroel, and the completion of Eretz Yisrael. And there are a few parties that can claim that, but one thing is clear: that we have to focus on Ahavat Yisrael and the prohibition not to hate another Jew. Unfortunately, from past experiences in this wonderful country, the time of election is a very, very tense time. But we've already decided many times that whatever happens, whatever we decide in Chabad Rechavia, that's what goes. So we're deciding now that this election is going to be factual and not chas v'shalom personal. Everyone, say your opinion, don't say your opinion. Try not to say it over here because we're trying to keep out of politics. But you can talk in concept, you can talk in ideas, but let's not get personal at one another. In the first several pages of this mimer, of this Chassidic discourse, the Tzemach Tzedek, third Chabad Rebbe, Menachem Mendel, who lived approximately 150 years ago, he talks about how we can bring ourselves to true Ahavat Yisrael. And he says if we view ourselves as being different limbs of the same body, so you can't have one part of the body which is fighting against the other part of the body. That's why Adam HaRishon had a general neshama, an all-encompassing neshama of all of the neshamot, all the souls of all the generations to come. Now, the truth is that every generation has a Moshe, every generation has a leader, and it's not just a technical position, rather it's a meaningful position, that his neshama includes in itself all of the neshamot of his generation. But Adam HaRishon, within having a general neshama, he didn't only have a general neshama for his generation, which was a very small generation. Well, he lived for 930 years. But the first part was just him and his wife and Cain and Hevel and so on. But even afterwards, they didn't multiply too much. But his neshama was also a general neshama for all generations to come. So this idea of looking at ourselves and looking at our colleague and our pal, that they're not a separate entity, rather one parcel, whatever, of the same unit. So then, if we're able to bring ourselves to that state, then hopefully we can love every single Jew. So let's.
Rabbi, how does that relate, if it does at all, with the idea of the internal struggles that we have with the animal soul and the godly soul?
That's a great question. So the Mittel Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Goldberg, the son of the Baal Tanya, and the uncle and father-in-law of the Tzemach Tzedek, Rabbi Goldberg said as follows. He said, when two Jews meet, you have two godly souls over one animal soul.
Over one animal?
That's what he says, over one animal soul.
I think the reverse, actually.
Why? Very good, very good. Please explain why.
Because we all have the godly soul.
Why would you say reverse?
There's one God, and we have the godly soul within.
Great question.
That's what I also remember.
Great question.
One soul and two animal souls.
Great question.
More logical.
Seemingly, that if the whole thing is that all of our souls are one unit, they just came down and seem different, but they're really one, so it should be one your and my neshama is one,
Godly soul.
and that's the godly soul, and it counters the two animal souls. So the answer is as follows. Answer is, you have a very good point. I'm just trying to explain the Mitzvotecha Rebbe statement. He said, when you have two individuals that are talking to each other, and each one has a godly soul and an animal soul, so you have two animal souls versus one animal soul, and two animal souls over one animal, two godly souls over one animal soul. So each individual is considered, each animal soul is considered separate. It's considered alone because there's no way that it can bridge with the other animal soul.
Because it's the egos involved.
Correct. So when we say that there are two animal souls, when we say that there are two godly souls, we're not saying that there are two separate godly souls. We're saying, on the contrary, we're enforcing what you're saying, that there are two godly souls on one animal soul. And the same thing, the opposite. There are two godly souls for this animal soul. Two individuals talking to each other. So it's the two godly souls that are ganging up, so to speak, on the other, not ganging up. They're empowering the other individual that they can be, that there's two on one. And then there's two on one. Am I being clear? Okay, I'll try to say it again. I'll say it 100 times. It's an amazing point.
101.
When you, what?
101.
At least 101. When you and I are talking, so let's call it, instead of, just to explain in another context, let's use the word body instead of animal soul. Okay? So each of us has a body, and each of us has a neshama. So when you and I are talking words of Torah, or just meeting, we're connecting what's happening, that our godly souls are connecting, and the two godly souls are countering my animal soul, my body. And the same thing the opposite. The same thing, both of our godly souls are countering or are inspiring, let's say, your body. Separate, two different scenarios. First, they're ganging up. First, they're building up. They're trying to inspire mine or yours. It doesn't make differences. First, and then does the other one. So basically, there are two animal souls that are. I'm missing the exact word. That are sure.
Confirmed.
So each of the two animal souls is empowered by the combination of two divine souls.
Correct.
Right?
Each of the that's said very well. Each of the two animal souls individually, that's an important word, individually are inspired by two. So it's two on one. That's the point. It's two on one. Two godly souls on one. And then two godly souls on the other.
I guess where I'm stuck is that I would think that all of our godly souls are part of one.
You're right.
So that's where
you're right.
Stated. And the animal souls, that's the diversity and multiplicity.
You're right.
That we hear
but we're just using different terminology. let me say it in other words. When you and I are talking, then the godly soul is doubled. You get that? When they say doubled, it doesn't mean they're separate. It's just a double power. So once it's doubled, so it's 2 versus 1, who wins? The 2. So it's 2. It's the same thing, just using a different terminology.
I mean, it could be. Okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say that same idea goes for the minion. If you have two,
Yeah.
we are holy. Their holy soul is double.
Excellent.
I was
Then you
going to
have
say that here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
10, or it's even larger.
Excellent.
You
The Mishnah
could even
says.
use it like this, a group here.
Very good.
There's
We
godly
learned it
souls.
this morning in the Perkei Avot in our share online on Facebook Live and on Zoom, Kol Knesiyah Shi L'Shem Shamayim, every gathering which is for the sake of heaven, learning Torah, Sofa L'Itkayim is going to be sustained, is going to be everlasting.
Right.
And any gathering which is not for the sake of heaven, just people just wasting their time, that doesn't have a real kiyum, doesn't have a real sustenance. It's just very, very weak. It's very shallow. Mm-hmm. So, in the beginning of the 3rd chapter of Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah says that when you have one person sitting, it's one thing. If you have 2 people that are sitting that are Shnayim Sha'oskim, 2 people that are learning Torah, it's an extra level of godliness. If there are 3 people that are learning Torah, then there's even a stronger level of godliness.
Yeah.
10, and then it says 5, it depends on which Mishnah, a few Mishnahs, and 10 people, wow, like you said, there's a minion, right? That's an extra special power of holiness. And this reminds me of what I talked about at the Kiddush this week, one of the points, the Farbrengen after davening. I said there's something very strange. We say, how do you know that there's such a thing as a minion? How do you know that a minion? They say Canada is a Jewish country because it's the minion. So, how do we know that a minion works? Because it says in last week's parsha that there were 10 bad spies and they were called Eidah. Eidah is a group, a congregation.
Yeah.
From here we know that a congregation is called 10. So I asked a simple question. We're learning such a great concept of 10 people getting together and davening together. Where did we learn it from? From 10 evil people. And because of these guys, we stayed in the desert for 40 years. And till today, in a sense, we're suffering Tisha B'Av and all the things that happened that same night when they came back and said their bad report. We're learning such a holy thing that 10 people can make a minyan and do Kaddish and Kedusha and Baruch Hu and all the holy things that we do in the davening from the fact that these guys were 10. Just like Eidah over there means 10, so too, every Eidah means 10. We always have to have a group of people in order to say Davar Shabbat Kedusha, something with unholiness.
That is why the number is 10?
That's how we know that 10 makes up a minyan.
Ah, okay.
But using this logic, you would think if there was incremental increases in the divine soul, that it would defeat what you're calling the one soul,
The
Animal.
the animal soul. And that doesn't seem to be the case.
It is. It's not only defeating it, it's inspiring it. It's waking it up because it's 2-on-1. So 2-on-1 doesn't mean that they crush it. 2-on-1 means that they overcome it, overwhelm it with good.
Yeah. We're inspiring the person that's the body.
I'll have to get back with you.
No problem. Ponder. Please don't lose any sleep.
That can only
You know I
happen,
do.
Baruch Hashem, it's a good sign. Yes.
That can only happen through the study of the Torah, or there is another.
Talking about the minyan?
No, the increasing like the powerful of the 2 souls.
No, it's a good question.
Anywhere.
The
Yeah.
fact itself that they're discussing, that they're meeting, of course, when they're learning Torah, it's much more powerful. But the fact itself that 2 Jews are getting together, you have 2 neshamas, that's like, it's like sparks in the air. Throwing, the what's called, the
Fireworks?
fireworks. That's like fire. Wow. It's like, if you're a tzaddik, then you can see the kedusha, the holiness shaking and coming forth. Mm-hmm. So I just want to finish off with what I started saying earlier, but the 10 people. 10 people makes a minyan. How could you learn a minyan from something so bad of the 10 bad spies? So I don't remember if I saw this somewhere or what, but I think the answer is that if we learn that 10 people can make a minyan from a scenario that was holy, 10 holy people, then we would say, oh, who can make a minyan? Only 10 tzaddikim. But we see that 10 people, they're Jews. They have a neshama. They were bad. But they're Jews. They have a neshama. We see from here that it doesn't make a difference how low they are. The 10 neshamas getting together, that itself is holy. This is why we say before Yom Kippur that we're allowed to daven with the sinners, quote unquote. Because really, tzibur, which means a congregation, the root word of tzibur are 3 letters. In Hebrew in general, almost every root, pretty much every word has a root word, and the root words are usually made up of 3 letters. Tzadik, Bet, Resh. Tzadik means, it refers to the tzadikim, righteous. Bet is Beinonim, intermediate. And the Resh is Rishayim, evil. So that's a real tzibur. Tzibur, a real congregation is when you have everyone together, all of Am Yisroel, or in the context that we're talking about now, about the Meraglim, the spies, that an Eidah, a congregation, quote unquote, can also be all Rishayim. You don't have to have a certain high level of knowledge and a dedication. Of course it's better. Of course we have to aspire for that. But if you have 10 people, then we look at the person, which is really magnifies what we're talking about over here. We look at the person not for what they do, rather for who they are. You're a Jew, you have a neshama, you count. That's it, you count. Okay, let's start at the top of 24. Beneath the line. V'lachen, and therefore, nitztavinu gamken, we were commanded le'ahov kol adam Yisrael, to love every single Jew. Shaharei, kol adam kalul mikol nishmot Yisrael, kanizkalel min ha'yivarim. Since each Jew includes all the souls of Israel, as in the above analogy of the bodily organs. So it's not just that the different organs of the same body, hey, you're part of the same body, why are you fighting? It's moreover, we learned in the last shir that every organ on some level is included of all other organs. We talked about reflexology, that I think it's only, I don't know if it's only the feet, maybe that's also in other parts of the body, but that's the idea. That's just an example. Where in the foot, if you touch the right point, you can affect other parts. It seems like all other parts of the body. It's an amazing thing. So each and every neshama includes all neshamot. So if you think you have to be a Moshe, the Rebbe, the leader of the generation, in order to have this big neshama, of course, that's true, that's correct. You do have to have this big neshama, and Moshe naturally has this big neshama. But on a smaller scale, every single Jew is like a little Moshe. Every single Jew includes within itself all of the other neshamot. So it's not only like, oh, you and I are part of the same body, so why are we fighting? You and I are one. You and I have the exact same, on some level, the exact same parts of all the neshamot, because we all include within ourselves everyone else. Third paragraph. V'harei imken, therefore, if so, bo yesh zilato gamken v'yav zilato kamo. So if the person incorporates also his fellow, he should love his fellow as he does himself. That's why it says kamocha. In the beginning of the Maimer, a couple of months ago, we asked, how could you love another person kamocha, just like yourself? It's almost impossible. How could you expect someone to love your friend kamocha? And here's the answer, kamocha. Because you're in him and he's in you. It's all one big happy family, one big sholent, one big unit. We seem in externally we're different people, different units. But if you're able to zoom in, then you will realize that we're all part of one unit.
Because of the godly soul.
Correct.
Not the animal soul.
Correct. I'm telling you, we agree. I'm telling you. We'll figure out soon how. But that's another issue. Believe me, we agree. We're saying the same thing. It's just different words. Kain hu kalul b'zulato. Similarly, he is incorporated within his fellow. As mentioned above, with reference to the interconnection of the body's organs. We learned all the way in the beginning of the Maimer that we accept upon ourselves a special mitzvah before davening of loving every single Jew as yourself. Hareini mekabel alai mitzvah taseh. I accept upon we're supposed to say it before the matovu. Hareini, it's an Alter Rebbe Siddur, the Chabad Siddur. I accept upon myself the positive mitzvah of v'ahavta l'orecha kamocha, loving your fellow Jew as yourself. Kidei sheyuchal limsor nafsho be'echad. So we asked in the beginning, why it's so important to say it before davening? You're focusing on Hashem. Keep on davening, finish davening, learn, eat. Then you say, you know what, I'm going to the world, I'm going to meet people. I love every single Jew like myself. Why do I have to say it before davening? You didn't even talk to us. Okay, you said some Birkot HaShachar, the morning blessings, but you didn't do the tefillah yet. You didn't daven yet. So why is it so important to take upon yourself? So here's the point. You want to offer your soul to Hashem and have it ascend to Hashem in an arousal from below when we're saying the word echad, one in the Shema. You gotta first be the Shema, be echad down here. You want to say, oh Hashem echad, Hashem is one, it's all holy, it's all inspiring, it's great. But if you're missing between one Jew and another, you're missing your completion, you're missing your dedication, you're missing your oneness, then you can't really stand in front of Hashem. What do you think the parent is going to say if you tell the parent, I hate your child, but I love you? The parent's going to send you flying. He'll throw you in the deep end. What do you mean? My child is one with me. You say, Hashem, I love you. But the other Jew, down the block, or my neighbor that makes me crazy and drops water down on my head every time I walk by, the dirty sponja, excuse me, it's only in Israel, don't worry. You can have it anywhere else. They won't understand it as much as I explain it to them. You have to love that neighbor too. Yes, everybody has a neighbor. Oh, I hate that neighbor. Doesn't matter. You have to love every single Jew. Then you can go ahead and say, Hashem, you have to Hashem Elokecha, Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. But if you're missing in the oneness between one Jew and another, Ben Adam L'Chavero, then we can't really come to the Echad yet. Obviously we could. You could say Shema anytime, obviously. But it's missing. There's something missing there. It's incomplete, in a sense. Because first comes Ben Adam L'Chavero, between man and man, man and the friend. Sheta'aleh l'fnei Hashem, b'bchinat mayim nukvin b'kriyat Shema. It's called an arousal from below. Let's skip the paragraph for a second. We'll do the bottom paragraph. This ascent is not possible unless the soul is complete and healthy. Just as a body's physical health depends on the soundness of all its limbs, because all the limbs feel when one limb is hurting, so too a person's spiritual health results from the soundness with all the dimensions of his soul, including those associated with other people. Mm-hmm. So first let's fix our interpersonal relationships, and then we can focus on our godly relationships with Hashem. Let's just go back please to the third to last paragraph on page 24. Our prayers compensate for sacrifices. Implied is that the spiritual service of prayer is bringing one's own self as a sacrifice. It says in the beginning of Chumash Vayikra, the previous Chumash of Leviticus, it says right in the second, I believe, the second verse, Adam ki yakriv mikem, a man that will offer from you. So there's a joke about this guy didn't know how to speak. It's about a certain group, but they didn't know how to speak English properly. So he said, I threw my mother out the window, a towel. Sounds like Adam ki yakriv mikem. A man, when he will, even in Hebrew it doesn't make so much sense. Adam, a man, when a person will offer from you an animal, min bakar, min atzon, different types of animals. It should say, Adam mikem, a man from you, from the whole congregation, one of you, ki akriv, when you will offer Korban Hashem. So why does the Mikem go afterwards? So the Alter Rebbe explains, beautiful interpretation. It's not Chas v'Shalom a mistake. There's no mistakes in the Torah. Adam ki akriv Mikem. The deeper level of Korban, of an offering, is what we give of ourselves. And the previous Rebbe explains it beautifully at great length in the famous mimer of Bati Lagani of Tafshin Yud, the final mimer that he edited, 1950. So there he writes that there are different types of animals. We say in the pasuk, Min bakar, cattle, Min hatzon, sheep, Min hakvasim, whatever, all the different types of animals that we're allowed to bring. So he says there are some, the animal soul, right? Chanoch, the animal soul. That's sometimes like for some people it's coarse. It's like a cattle. Some people like a cow. Some people like an ox. Like very, very obviously coarse. And then there's some refined. Some people have refined animal soul, like a little sheep or a goat, making their own business, or a little chicken, whatever. Everyone on their own level. But at the end of the day, it's an animal, and so we have to set it straight. We have to offer it to Hashem. We have to elevate it. So that's ki akriv mikem. When a person, when they'll bring a korban, mikem from you, not just that you will bring an animal. You will bring you will sacrifice some of yourself, not God forbid to kill yourself, but to sacrifice a little bit of yourself. Like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that Hillel Zaken, he would wait 5 or 10 minutes. He would. They gave it, the hotel, they give lunch or dinner at a certain time, 7:30, 7:40 shows up. I have to be the first one online. Control my little animal inside. And then when he already went, then he said, I'm going to do chesed with my shameful body or animal soul, whatever it is. So this means that when we daven, our prayer is similar to those korbanot that we talk about in the beginning of Vayikra. Let's continue, please. Hence, as the Tzemach Tzedek continues to explain, one must be unblemished as was required of a sacrifice. Just like a korban has to be tamim, it has to be complete. So too, when we stand in front of Hashem, we have to be tamim. A lack of unity between us creates disqualifying blemishes, as it were. You want to be complete, you want to stand in front of Hashem, be a big tzaddik. Oh yeah, Hashem, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to close my eyes and put my talis over my head, I'll be a big tzaddik. That's wonderful. But if you're missing in the oneness between you and another Jew, then it's not tamim. You want to be tamim, right? You want Hashem to answer all of your prayers. But if you're not, if you don't have the Ahavat Yisrael in completion, hopefully, Hashem has to give us the koach and the ability to do this. But in principle, I hope we can understand it. That comes first, and then love of Hashem comes second.
So is it sacrificing the animal soul?
Correct. Correct. It doesn't have to be killing the animal soul. Korban means lahakriv, to bring closer. So to bring closer, to elevate to Hashem. So in the physical act of sacrifice, it's killing the animal, but it doesn't have to be that. Elevating and embracing and bringing closer can be a much greater level. As an example, if we're talking already about animals, that sometimes they wanted to bring the biggest animal. It's a much greater gift to Hashem. Bring a big ox or a massive animal. But how do you get it to come? You should show it a carrot, a nice big carrot, and you keep on moving, and it comes until it comes all the way there. So if you're able to get the animal soul, chanof, this animal soul, it's called the Rav Tuvuot Bekoach Shor. There's a lot of tuvua, a lot of wheat, a lot of food, of substance in the koach of a shor. Shor is an ox. So you have an ox that's really, if you can get that ox to go along with you and to give you energy and you want to bring, wow, this is a good korban for Hashem, then you've succeeded much more. It's it's almost not a big deal that the neshama becomes elevated, but the body and the animal soul just stay aside. If you can get what the Baal Shem Tov's innovation was. If you can get the body to also want godliness, that's a great accomplishment. Now let's go to the top of 25, please. The Hainu, which means Shetihiyeh klula mikol haneshama. The latter state is accomplished when the soul incorporates all of the other souls. Just as one of the organs of the body is healthy when the veins that connect it with all the other organs are healthy, then his soul can ascend in favor for Hashem at the level of his chokhmah, which is the highest level that we can perceive. Which contains all the souls actually as one. Soon we're going to expand on this, but since the neshama has unified with all of the other souls in an inclusive way, not just everyone together, but everyone's intertwined, interconnected. Yicholahi la'alot be'or ha'klali shehu mikoran v'shorshon.
We're talking about the animal souls coming together.
No, now we're talking about the godly souls. We're talking about the Avat Yisroel. Animal souls, I'm glad you asked. The animal souls is kind of a side note that the godly soul can affect that. But what's the main point? The main point is that when we look at another person, we have to try to zoom in on their godly soul. And that's true Achdut. At the end of the day, Achdut is when you have two individuals that are within reach. But to have Achdut of two different concepts, and that's not necessarily Achdut. If you have a person in a barn with other animals, would you say that has achdut? He feels one with them. He feels. You could say he respects them. You could say he's giving them to eat, give them food. But you say that oh wow, I feel the achdut. I don't think. No. There's an example. You say a king. So you say a king is a king over people, right? You can't say he's a king over animals. It doesn't make sense. He's a king. You could say he's a shepherd, but he's not a king. Or even on his own children, you can't say he's a king. He's a father, he's a guide, he's a mentor, I don't know, whatever adjective you want to use. But you can't say he's a king. So I'm just saying that in relationships, it has to be within reach, within the same category. Right. So you can't say, in our case, you can't say that as achdut, he feels one with all of the horses in the barn. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. The words don't go together. So that's why the animal soul. We talk about the animal soul. You can talk about achdut. Talk about the body. It's not real achdut because the different animal souls, different bodies are totally different. Okay. Here we go. Yichola hi la'alot ba'or ha'klali shehu mikoran b'shoshan. It can ascend into the general, all-encompassing light that is its source and root. 3 small paragraphs before the bottom of the page. V'hahit kadalut zot hu k'sheha'adam mar'eh ba'atzmo u'bigufo ken she'ohev re'ehu. Let's continue. We'll do all the English together. Ke'evarim ha'klum zeh mizeh v'shali shalach ki atzmo u'v'saro hu שאין כן כששונא לאחד מישראל בליבו, הרי הוא מפריד מנפשו אותו חלק של זולתו הכלול בו. We read a little too much. Let's go back to the English. This unity is achieved when a man demonstrates with his person and with his body that he loves his fellow. So you want to achieve real achdut, you want Hashem to give you, to shine upon you with His echad, with His oneness, so you have to exercise it yourself. Similar to the way the bodily organs are incorporated within each other. It's a feeling of what's mine is yours. We did it Pirkei Avot a couple of weeks ago. Shali shalach, v'shalach shalach. We have what's mine is yours is mine. We have different levels. And the highest level is what's mine is yours, and what's yours is yours. So that feeling that wasn't what's mine is yours. How doesn't make any sense. I worked for this. Why what's mine is yours? What gives you the right to have what's mine? I don't understand. Why would someone say Shali Shalach? It doesn't make any sense. It's a chassid, a pious person. That's what the Mishnah says, right? The evil person says, what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. That's the flip side of the coin. It's also wacky. But let's try to understand the chassid for a second. What's going through his mind? What's mine is yours and what's yours is yours. Why is what's mine is yours? Answer is, if you look at me and you, or you and I as being two separate entities, then you're right. There's no reason why you should have what's mine. Because I worked for mine, I worked hard. All of a sudden it becomes yours? Just because I said, why would I even say that? Why would it even occur to me? But if I view you as being part of me, so it's just technical. What's mine is yours, what's yours is yours. Just because we're separate bodies, but in soul, we're all one. We're both one. So therefore, I could easily say, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is yours. Because it's not you and I, or me and you. It's us. It's like Rabbi Aryeh Levine, the great Tzedek, the Yerushalmi Tzedek, the rabbi of the prisoners. Lived over here in Achlot. He could go to his shul, to his home. So he went. His wife's foot was hurting her, so he went to the doctor with her. He says, "My wife's foot is hurting us."
But the other story is our foot is hurting us.
Okay, then that's already a very high level.
I have a question, Rabbi.
Sure.
You know, a lot of these are all pertaining to men. How does that include the women in this? Because women don't go to a minyan. You know, they pray alone every morning when they start their day and throughout the day, you know, unless you're in a minyan, and you mentioned that several times. So explain to me how that applies to women.
Okay, so I'm going to separate between the halachic implication of minyan,
okay,
and then the whole underlining subject of Ahavat Yisroel.
Okay.
Just to get the minyan out of the way, because that's not the main focus over here. The minyan is true. It's the halacha. It's the halacha that 10 men coming together in the same room. There's a special level of kedusha, not chas v'shalom to put aside women. It's just a fact. I don't know how it works. This is the Torah tells us. I always tell women that women count over here at Chabad Rechavia, not for the minyan, but they count.
Okay.
So you count. Everyone counts on their own level, and Hashem is the one who decides. We can't make this stuff up. It's not an offensive thing. I don't think, at least.
Right.
Just like women have much greater qualities and holier neshamas than men, and the men, whatever. Each one is just so it's how Hashem says that. So that's regarding the minyan. Now we're talking about Ahavat Yisroel, and there's absolutely no difference in men and women.
Okay. It just seems like it's written like towards men.
It's
kind of focused on
I'm
that
glad
part
you
of
asked.
the praying of men, and women pray just as often as men, if not more.
It was just one point that we were bringing out,
right,
which was an example for getting together.
Right.
A congregation.
Yeah.
Number of different bodies coming together and making a great spiritual experience.
Okay.
But the underlying point is definitely men and women alike.
Okay, so apart from the minyan, if you're praying alone, I mean, you have your neshama there, but you also, you don't need a group to connect if you're by yourself. I mean, you don't have that group or other person to make two versus
It's
one.
fine. It's not. It's not as if you don't have a minion, then you can't pray.
No, I'm just saying.
Even a man, especially by a woman.
Right.
Obviously, if there's a minion in your city, in your area, you need to go to the minion.
Right.
But if for whatever reason, I don't know, whatever, any reason can happen, the person missed a minion or whatever, they should definitely daven alone. It's better to daven in a shul alone than at home. But at least any case of davening, in fact, the real biblical mitzvah of prayer, without any connection to Shachris, Mincha, or Mariv, wherever you are, in any state, in any scenario, any time, you need Hashem, you turn right to Hashem in any language and you say with your mouth, Hashem, please give me this and that, whatever it is. You've done a positive mitzvah. So that's the real mitzvah. So I'm just saying, obviously to say Kaddish, you need to have a minyan of 10 men. That's Allah. But just one example of how to bring out the achdut between us. Okay?
Yes.
Top of 26. Ki atzmo uvesarohu, for his fellow on his own, our bone, it is his own bone and flesh. So that's why shali, shalach, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is yours. Isn't that obvious? What's yours is yours. Thank you very much. You don't need me to tell you that what's yours is yours. But I think what the Mishnah is saying is just like we understand that shalach, whatever is yours. Why? Because it's yours. You earned it. You deserved it. You acquired it. So too, shali shalach. So too, what's mine is yours. Because we're all one. It's not like there are two different entities. We're all, on a deeper level, we're all really one. So therefore, what's mine is yours. Just like what's yours is yours, so too what's mine is yours.
I have a question. Is
Sure.
the godly soul of each one different as our animal souls? Or is the same?
Every person, it's hard to explain because a soul is a spiritual thing. So it's not like you have a tablecloth and you cut up different pieces and each one gets a piece. It's a spiritual thing, so it's hard to cut up. But basically, on one hand, every person has within themselves a neshama. But on the other hand, all the neshamas are one. It's hard to give an example in the physical world. The closest we can get to is candles. So you have a number of candles in the room, and let's say there's one candle that's not lit. You touch it to the other candle which is lit. So then now it has a fire on it. It doesn't have a half a fire or a quarter of a fire or a third of a fire. It has each one has the entire fire. So on one hand, you took it from there, so it's a piece of there. On the other hand, each one is the same fire. It's the same flame. It's all the same. And when you put them together, you can almost see. You can't really see because it's spiritual, but you can almost see how all the fires are unifying and becoming one larger flame. Like the Havdalah candle has 5 or 6, at least 2.
But the animal soul is like represented somehow, or bad part, or not. It's connected with the I don't know, not the. It's not so elevated, of course, as the.
Correct. That's part of the work. The animal soul is not bad. It's just animalistic.
But is there the difference between each?
Between who?
Between us, the difference is there in the animal soul.
In
that part of the soul.
It's like one's good and one's bad.
I'm trying to understand that.
Okay, so let's say like this. Let's say that both we have, let's say, a godly soul, animal soul, and a body. In all 3 scenarios, on some level we have our own thing. On some level, it's all connected. When in the neshama, it's much stronger. But on some level, they're all connected. Okay, so the more we learn about what the animal soul is and what the godly soul is, we'll be able to understand better each one on its own, each of these levels on their own, how they're individuals and how they're how they can be united, how they really one.
Because in the connection, can someone contribute more than another one?
So that's a good question. Sometimes in the contributions we have for the Beit HaMikdash, that whoever can give more should try to give more. On the other hand, we have the machzit shekel, the half a shekel, that everyone gives the same. So each one emphasizes another point. The machzit shekel, let's start from that because that's more of a general thing and that's closer to what we're trying to bring out. That machzit shekel is the same by everyone. Therefore, that indicates how we're all the same, how we're all together. Everything has a pro and con. The pro with the other thing is that everyone gives as much as possible, as much as you can, as much you can afford. So each scenario has its own interpretation. Second paragraph, 26. Masha Einkein, if however, God forbid, like we learned in the beginning of this mimer, that it's not only you should love every Jew, but you should not hate any Jew. If a person feels hatred in his heart for a fellow Jew, he separates from his soul that part of his fellow contained within him. So he's basically missing himself because he's trying to get away from it. Over here we're talking about...
No, just
It's a good question. Yeah, we're talking about the Kaddish. Because the animal soul is already separated.
Yeah.
Here, the person is almost with his hands, almost consciously separating someone else from him. Rejecting it with this hatred and removing his own will from it. This causes a blemish and a lack in his own soul. For now, this part is lacking within him. He thus becomes defective. But he wants to go to it in front of Hashem and wants to be tamim, he wants to be complete. So he has to work on that before he davens. Since every individual part is compromised of all 615 root souls. Because each and every one of the 615 is included of 613, and all that is each one's included of the 4 worlds, the 5 levels of neshama, many different sub-levels. And therefore the other person is included within him. Through his hatred, he severes that individual part from himself. He is then unable to ascend in favor before Hashem. And it says in the verse, Asher yevomum lo yikrav lakrid. As it is written, any coin within whom there is a blemish shall not approach to offer. Page 27. She'or ein sof baruch hu, for the or ein sof, the infinite light of Hashem, hakolel kulam, which compromises them all, lo yisbelenu, will not tolerate him. Nitzad hachisaron shabo, because of the flaw within him. Oh, you're missing something? You're missing in your Avat Yisroel? So stay there. Stay back a little bit. And you can still daven. But on a deeper level, he's missing something major. He's not just missing a technical thing. He's missing a major part. Shechiser oto ha'ever aprati, the lack of that particular element. Shara ein sof baruch hu kolel gam oto. But the element for the ein sof comprises that missing individual as well. This should suffice for the intelligent. The need for unity this need for unity explains why we have been commanded with several prohibitions against offerings being brought by blemished kohanim and against defective sacrificial animals themselves. It says in the Parshat Emor. Why it's so important? Not only were we commanded not to bring the whole list of animals or the whole list of blemishes, but also we have a positive mitzvah that every korban, every offering should be offered tamim, unblemished. inside we have likewise been enjoined with a positive precept to offer every sacrifice unblemished. Kidduch it says in the verse, Tamim hiyel ratzon, to be accepted, it shall be perfect. So in summary, we have a very important task, that before we daven, we need to make sure that we're good with every other Jew. And then we could turn to Hashem to give us whatever we need. But the number one thing is that we should be complete. As we're going to see in the next year, in the second paragraph, the whole advantage of what we can accomplish, helping being tamim, that we should be complete, standing in front of Hashem. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week, B'ezrat Hashem. And also, whoever wants to sign up for our big Farbrengen in honor of the Rebbe's Yahrzeit, it's going to be Sunday, July 3rd, and every morning on Facebook Live and Zoom at 9:15 Jerusalem time. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. This class has been dedicated generously by my brother Beryl Goldberg in memory of our late grandmother Chaya Sarah Bat Yecheskel.